G'day, I'm Paul. So Hyundai is continuing its EV rollout with the Ioniq 6. It's like a sedan version of the Ioniq 5. I actually have a Ioniq 6 NFT in my collection. This competes with things like the Tesla Model 3, the Polestar 2. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting shape, I think. It's kind of like a sedan, swoopy, coupe style thing. And it's priced at $74,000. This is the entry-level version called the Dynamic. Today we're going to do a detailed review of this car. So if you do want to skip ahead to other parts of this review, you can use the time codes on the screen. If you're on YouTube, you can scroll down and use the chapters below. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel, press the bell icon. That way you'll find out every single time we drive a new car like this. So let's talk about the exterior design. You've got 8 colours to pick from. They're all free of charge, which is exciting news. There is a matte colour though, and that'll set you back $1,000. What do you reckon about the design? I don't know, when I saw it in pictures, I wasn't a huge fan of it, and design is entirely subjective. But look, here in person, it's got some really interesting proportions. I personally think that the back kind of has an AU Falcon vibe to it. I've heard 911 at the back as well. So yeah, it's like a very interesting design. So let's talk about some of the closer design elements though. So big Hyundai logo up the front there. It's a bit like the Kia logo now, where they've shaved it off and given it that sort of brushed aluminium finish to it. Down the bottom here, you've got louvers that open and close depending on the cooling requirements of the battery system. Little radar tucked behind there as well. Camera there and front parking sensors as well. This kind of continues the theme of the pixel LEDs that we've seen on the Ioniq 5. You can see those along the bottom there, and then full LED lights on the top section as well. It is quite a sleek design, and the reason for that is because it has a 0.21 coefficient of drag, which is incredibly good. It gives this car a bit more efficiency, and it means that it's not sort of facing as much wind resistance as some of the other cars, including the Ioniq 5. Let's have a look at the wheels around the side here. So these are pretty chubby tyres, so 18-inch alloy wheels. You can see the profile, and that 55 profile is pretty big. Very aero-oriented wheels too, so a machined finish on the outside, piano black on the inside there. It means that this is getting as much benefit as it can from being slippery as it carves through the air. Little air vent there that pops out from the front too, and these are EV specific tyres as well. The entry level here is rear wheel drive only, so it is really just engineered for getting as much range as you can, and the range is something like just over 600 kilometres, which is pretty impressive. Up the top here, you have more of that pixel LED set up for the indicator. Camera there in the wing mirror for the 360 camera. Door handles similar to the Ioniq 5, where they tuck in when they're not in use. Privacy glass, shark fin aerial. The thing I love about this, if you look at it from the side angle, it's see-through, so you can actually see the elements inside that, which I reckon is pretty damn cool. And then come around to the back here. Have a look at the back. It is just incredible. There is so much going on here. So let's start at the top here. You've got 2 sets of spoilers. You've got this top one here that gives the air somewhere to go. Then you've got a second one here as well, potentially for a bit of downforce. It is just such a fascinating setup, and yeah, when you see it here in person, it does look quite busy, but kind of works. You've got the LED strip that runs along the back here, similar to the 911 with that pixel LED setup. A little further down here, you have reverse lights and a reflector, and also these vertical struts as well, with some piano black diffuser elements down the bottom there too. Got a camera built into here, and then a boot button here as well. So let me know what you reckon about the design. Do you think it looks good? Do you think it's a bit over the top? I'm very keen to see what you think, so let me know in the comments section below. Okay, so we're in the Ioniq 6. Let's start off with the key. Now, this is interesting. I'll tell you why in a second. You've got lock, unlock, and hold there to remote start. Over here, you've got a button for the boot and then a remote parking function as well. Blank on the back. It's a proximity sensing key, so you can leave that in your pocket. Use the push button start to kick things on. Now, the reason this is so interesting is because I saw this key and I thought, it's the weirdest looking key. Just seems bizarre, but then it all starts to make sense when you tilt it that way, and it's the Hyundai H just there. So yeah, I like that they've actually thought about that. I still think it looks a bit strange, but there is some thought put into that, which is great. What about the design in here? Look, it is actually interesting, because normally I would, I don't know, complain a little bit. Well, some of you would accuse me of complaining a little bit about hard touch surfaces, but I actually really like the center here. So this is all absolutely rock solid, but the material is so interesting. It's not piano black, it's not any of that annoying stuff, but it looks really cool. It's got a great texture to it, and this car feels futuristic. I don't know, just sitting here, everything looks really nice and cool. And when I say this is a Model 3 competitor, it is more expensive than a Model 3, but to me, it actually just looks and feels a whole lot nicer. It has a bit of character to it. It's not just a boring interior with a screen in the center. This actually looks and feels like a premium vehicle. So yeah, let me know what you reckon in the comments section below. Do you think that this looks a bit weird or a bit cheap? Keen for your feedback. I do like as well when you switch the car on at night, you get these pulses of lights that flick across the dashboard here. So they've got a strong LED game as well. I just don't know that I'd be going for this white coloured interior. So anyway, in terms of your touch points though, all of this stuff is pretty firm to the touch. It is softer there, but still quite firm, and softer on the door again. How firm is it? We've got our gyrometer. We've tested the main surfaces in this cabin. If you want to see how this car compares to other cars that we've tested before, look at the link in the description below. Now, build quality, what is that like? A little bit wonky there in the center on that floating console, but the rest actually feels pretty good. And our door slam, sounds good. So let's talk infotainment. Ahead of the driver, you have a 12.3-inch display, and then the infotainment screen is a 12.3-inch display as well. So infotainment is all a touch screen. Head of the driver, it is all controlled using your steering wheel controls. Look, this infotainment system is pretty good. It's very high resolution, the screen, so when you are looking at it, everything looks nice and sharp and crisp as well. In addition to that, you have AM, FM, DAB digital radio, and that's all plumbed through an 8-speaker Bose branded sound system. The sound system is pretty good. Hyundai's now fitted this with a feature called Blue Link as well, so it's the remote connectivity technology. The car has an embedded SIM, and you're able to connect to the car using your phone. You're able to then check the status of the car, set temperatures and all that kind of thing remotely. You also get an SOS button up here as well to call emergency services if you do run into any dramas. A couple of the other cool features here that I like as well, the voice memo, so you can record messages to yourself if you come up with great ideas while you're driving. A valet mode, so that all of your personal features are not on display. You've got a quiet mode, so sound is only routed through the front of the vehicle here if you do have kids asleep in the back there. You then also have a manual built into the car as well. Yeah, in terms of smartphone mirroring, you have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Both of those are wide. I'll show you what Apple CarPlay looks like first. So there it is there, full screen integration, really nice and sharp, quick and easy to use as well. And this is Android Auto. So now actually fills up the screen. We've had issues previously with Hyundai and Android Auto where it hasn't filled up the screen properly, so that looks really good. So ahead of the driver, you have the 12.3-inch display. You can configure a little bit of this, but it's all sort of pretty straightforward. It does change the style when you move through different drive modes, and I'll show you what that all sort of looks like when we go for a bit of a drive. You have a head-up display ahead of the driver as well, which makes it easy to register your speed while you're out cruising the roads in your Ioniq 6. Okay, let's talk safety. So you have autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian and cyclist detection. You have a junction assistant, so if you try and drive across traffic that's coming towards you, it'll slam the brakes on for you. Blind spot monitor built into the wing mirror, but also when we go for a drive, I'm going to show you what this looks like, because when you put your indicator on, it actually shows up with a camera there as well, which is pretty cool. You have an auto dimming rear vision mirror, radar cruise control. You have a semi-autonomous steering function, which we'll test a little later on as well. Rear cross traffic alert, front and rear parking sensors, and then a 360 camera. And I'll show you what the camera looks like. So quality, that's actually great. So you've got steering wheel movement there with those lines. You can clearly see what's on the suitcase. Top-down view looks pretty good too. You can then also change the way these views look. So you've got like a trailer hitching assistant and then a shot down the sides of the car. You even have this 3D setup here as well with a slightly pixelated car. But yeah, pretty impressive camera there on the 360 setup. This is what the horn sounds like. Let's chat practicality, and we'll start off with connectivity. So you have a USB-A port down here. I'll run you through this wireless charger in just a second. In here, you've got two USB-C ports. In terms of storing your phone, it can live there on the wireless charger, or you can whack it there in the cup holders. Now, watch this. When you do pop it on the wireless charger, check out this bank of lights just here. Stick it down there, then they light up to give you an indication that it's charging. Just a really cool setup, and then pixel LEDs there as well. So yeah, very impressive setup. Have a look at this as well, just while we're on the topic of cool things. This reminds you of the VE Commodore window switches in the center, which is good, a nice little throwback to that. In terms of storing other things, your coffee cup, how does that go? I'll pop that in the center here. fits in fine there without running the risk of getting delittered. Our water bottle fits in there as well. Little teeth there to hold it in place. Oh, hold on. I don't think it just fits inside the door, so that means our big water bottle probably won't fit, not even close. What a bizarre space. It's like really quite narrow there, which is interesting. In terms of other storage, you've got this center console here, which is quite deep. You have this enormous space down the bottom here, which I really love. It's also where you're going to find your 12-volt outlet. And finally, you have your bucket-style glove box there too. Okay, and comfort, you have dual zone automatic climate control. You have seat heating for the front row. You also have manual steering adjustment with both tilt and reach. The seats, they are electrically adjustable, so you can go forwards, backwards. Your backrest can go forwards, backwards. You can lift the front of them, you can lift the back of them. You also have lumbar adjustment as well. And then on the actual comfort of the seats, they are pretty comfortable. They're perforated as well, which means they keep you nice and cool while you're driving. Just on our reach test though, some of the stuff on this screen is a little tricky to reach on those outer edges, so you do need to lean forward to catch some of that. So, second row, there is actually a stack of knee room there. Have a look at that. So that is due to that big wheelbase. It's funny because on the outside this looks quite small, but it's actually a heap of room here. There isn't a heap of toe room though. Look at that, my toes are wedged into that, which is a little bit disappointing. Headroom is okay, my head's sort of just touching that. So yeah, in terms of air vents, you've got some just here. You've got two USB-C outlets, a little storage nook down the bottom, map pockets over here, center armrest with two cup holders. That's what it looks like with our bottle in there. You can also store your bottle inside the door. It's a little bit sort of tricky to reach that. Ugh, actually very tricky to reach that. In terms of other bits and pieces, you can store your phone in here, which I think is pretty cool. Also down here, you're going to find a little slot with a power point for the vehicle to load. And then you also have auto up and down on the windows. Do they go all the way down? Oh, almost. And finally, ISOFIX points on the two outboard seats with 3 top tether points. Okay, let's talk cargo space. So you have a powered boot. Press that little button there, it cracks open. So you have 401 litres just in the standard configuration here. Beneath the cargo floor, you have a little bit of storage space plus the tyre mobility kit. You've also got storage under the front there. It's around 40 litres, so not a huge amount, but can stick stuff in there if you need to. Show you what it looks like with our bags in there. So there's the laptop bag. Throw a suitcase in. So it's actually not too bad. It's just that load floor isn't very high, so it'll make loading things like prams and stuff like that a little bit tricky. You can drop the second row though using these little levers here. Once that is dropped, you can push that out of the way. That gives you a little bit more space to load longer items in. Now, before we go for a drive, I want to show you this and just explain the EV components. So you have both AC and DC charging. AC charging is 3-phase up to 11 kilowatts. DC charging is up to 350 kilowatts. At the moment, it's capped at around 230 kilowatts, but this sits on an 800-volt architecture, which kind of future-proofs it. Battery size is just under 80 kilowatt hours, so it's a fairly meaty battery, especially for a rear-wheel drive variant. That means you have a theoretical driving range of just over 600 kilometres. Now, what is this thing? This is our vehicle to load. So you actually have in there a little plug. So it's a 15 amp plug that you can use, or 16 amp plug. It means that you can run up to 3.6 kilowatts worth of electricity out of the car's battery. So you're able to plug this little guy in. And then once that is plugged in, turn it on, and away you go. You have electricity that's able to run things. So 3.6 kilowatts, what could you run? Actually, a fair bit of stuff. Like a typical household air conditioner is around 2 kilowatts. So that's a pretty meaty device. So it gives you an idea of just how much current you can actually draw from this system. So we've just hit the road in the Ioniq 6. Immediately, I actually just recently drove the Ioniq 5, and this actually just sits much lower to the ground, so you do notice the differences there straight up. The other interesting thing as well, this seems more quieter straight out of the box as well, so we'll get to that in just a second. Now, let's chat about what is powering this. So this is the entry-level version, so it only has one electric motor, and that's based on the rear axle, so it's a rear-wheel drive. That electric motor produces 168 kilowatts of power and 350 newton meters of torque, which is a pretty sort of healthy amount. And in addition to that, you also have a stack of regen options here as well, so you can go all the way from level 0, which is coasting. If I just roll out of the throttle, that just coasts. Then I can go level 1, 2, 3, all the way to I-pedal. And in I-pedal, it actually comes to a full stop. But it's not like the Tesla system where it puts the brakes on it. It kind of just hovers there a little awkwardly, but it sort of stops anyway. So you get that same sort of setup that you do in Tesla and the Nissan Leaf as well with their version of this system. So from that point of view, it all feels really good. Does it do all the EV stuff? Yeah, it does. It doesn't feel massively powerful, and that's the thing to keep in mind. Off the line, it sort of gets up and moves okay, but with the 0 to 100 time of over 7 seconds, which we'll test shortly, it's not exactly the fastest thing in the world. So don't go buying the entry-level version of the Ioniq 6 thinking it's going to be like a bull out of the gates. Now let's talk energy efficiency / economy. Hyundai's claim is actually pretty impressive, but I can't really measure it against the claim here because we had to do some topsy-turvy filming today. It means that we did all our faster driving earlier on and it has upset our economy figure. But despite doing a stack of hot laps and all of our faster filming driving, it is consuming on average just under 20 kilowatt hours per 100 Ks, which is damn impressive. When we were doing our highway run down here, it was sitting at around 11 or 12 kilowatt hours per 100 Ks. So it does tell you that this is a very efficient motor, and the way they've streamlined this is actually working really well in terms of delivering economy. Okay, suspension. So this is a thing that we had a lot of problems with the Ioniq 5. They fixed part of it with the suspension revision, but because there was no local ride and handling tuning, it wasn't amazing. So let's dial up 130 for our sine waves. Let's see how this feels. Wow, it is genuinely like a completely different car. The body control over the sine waves there is fantastic, and this is the thing to note, that when you're driving a vehicle like this, yeah, it's great to have soft suspension in and around the city, but you do want it to feel nice and gentle when you are out on country roads without being over the top with the body control like you do find in the Ioniq 5. This is fantastic. It really sets a proper benchmark for Hyundai, and I think they need to replicate what they've done here with the Ioniq 5 to give it the body control it deserves, because that was much better in terms of the way that it performed. Okay, now our bumpy country road. We do this at 90 Ks an hour. You'll see all of my soft excess skin bouncing around here. 90 Ks an hour, we really get a good feel for what this is like on our terrible surface and our condensed sine wave over here as well. This is sensational. It is getting into all of those divots. It is handling this corrugated road beautifully. It's strange, it just feels like a completely different company has tuned this car compared to the Ioniq 5. This is genuinely fantastic. So impressed with this, and it feels like it is far better suited to Australian conditions. Okay, let's pop this into sport mode. We have eco, normal and sport. I can see the steering wheel light up when we change modes. Go for a little punt around our track here. We'll see what this feels like. Actually not too bad. A little bit of body roll there, but inherently you are limited somewhat by this being a rear wheel drive. Problem that you have is that you'll notice here the traction control will start flashing as we pick up speed on some of these corners. It's the same issue we had with the Tesla Model Y as well. When you do have just one motor supplying torque and also doing regen, it becomes a limiting factor, and you're switching often between regen and the mechanical brakes as well. So see what it feels like over our tram tracks here, which is where the Model Y struggled. It's actually not too bad. It's doing a much better job. I can feel the traction control biting. Probably where something like an ELSD, which Hyundai has, would actually serve a far better purpose in terms of stabilising the car and just giving it the sort of traction it deserves mid-corner. So we'll just jump on the throttle up the back here, see how this feels. It's actually piling on speed really nicely. So yeah, look, it is actually a really nice performer, and I think that it handles better than a Model 3. Like, it feels much better in terms of the way that it's sorted through there. So impressive stuff there from the Ioniq 6. Now, what about road noise? I mentioned earlier that this does feel quieter than the Ioniq 5, and thanks to that sort of aerodynamic design, you have EV-specific tyres with pretty thick rubber there as well. It actually doesn't let a lot of road noise into the cabin. You really don't hear anything. It is one of the quietest EVs I've driven, which is really pleasing to see. Now let's talk about visibility. So I can see clearly down the front there. The bonnet actually dives down a stack there. The wing mirrors are nice and big. Visibility out the back isn't too bad. It's not the biggest envelope, but you know, it is fine for what it is. Then in terms of parking in and around the city, it's actually pretty straightforward to park because you have front and rear parking sensors. And then in addition to that, you have a 360 camera that gives you great visibility around the cabin. Now, time to do just a little bit of testing of our semi-autonomous driving system. So we do this by hitting our circular track, 70 k's an hour. It simulates a road with a bend on it. By the way, that is the most annoying thing in the world. So every time I get into the car, I have to switch off the speed limit warning because it thinks we're going over the speed limit even though we're not. So anyway, so we're going to test in the 3 outer lanes here, and they all have curves, and it basically will simulate a tighter curve out on the road, and it dictates how much steering input the car is willing to do while it's under its semi-autonomous steering setting. So we'll get to 70 k's an hour. There it is, just there, and then I'll press this button here, get a little steering wheel appear up the top there. When it's green, it means the car is steering for us. So in this first lane that we test in, it's generally pretty straightforward. Most manufacturers pass here, no dramas. We're staying in the center of the lane, that's great. Jump over to the next lane. So let's have a look here. Steering wheel is green. We're staying center here as well, so it's doing a great job here. No dramas there. Good job. All right, we'll jump up to this lane. This is the one that gives most manufacturers grief. We'll see how it goes for the Hyundai. Wait for that to go green. It's thinking about it. Is thinking about it. Go a little bit higher here. Yes, it's thinking about it, but it's not loving it. And we'll try to get a little closer to that lane. A little closer to the top. No, it's not loving this at all, so it's not allowing the self-steering function to activate. So it's a pass for lane 1 and 2, but a fail here for lane 3. Okay, let's do some performance testing. So according to Hyundai, it'll do 0 to 100 in a little over 7 seconds. So we're going to do 0 to 120 so we can get our 80 to 120 run. And then we're also going to do a brake from 100 k's an hour to see how that goes. So here we go. I've got it in iPedal mode and I'll just mash it all the way to 120. We'll see what happens. Yeah, it's pretty sort of pokey off the line there, and that tapers off a little bit. So there's 100. And 120. All right, let's come to a stop. Have a look at our numbers. We'll see how that went. So 0 to 100, 7.2 seconds. I think the official number is 7.4, so we bet the official number. 80 to 120, 4.6 seconds. So that's also pretty good as well. 80 to 120 is the number that you want to see in terms of overtaking, and I think that is a pretty sort of healthy figure there. Okay, time to stop from 100 to see how well this pulls up in an emergency. So let's break our 100 k an hour marker there. We've got our braking marker here. So 100 to 0, 2.9 seconds and 39.02 meters. So we've actually started building a table with all of these results so you can compare cars to one another as we build that out. So yeah, have a look at the link in the description below if you want to see how this performed against other cars we've tested before. Now it's time for the test you either love or you hate, our reverse acceleration test. So let's see how fast it'll go in reverse. Here we go. Quick out of the blocks. 52 kilometers an hour. So the Ioniq 6, look, it is, I think, a little expensive for what it is, but when you do compare it to the Model 3, it is just significantly more enjoyable to drive. I feel it's a bit more engaging, the interior is nicer, and it's just, I don't know, it's just a better all-round vehicle. It may not be as practical in terms of the space and the tech that you're getting in the Tesla stuff, but to me, this is a really fun car to drive. So if you do want something that isn't a Tesla, but is still electric and interesting, this is probably the car for you. In terms of the downsides, yeah, it's just that packaging stuff. I think that Hyundai really needs to work on making better use of its EV platforms. When you look inside the front of this, there's no electric motor down there, yet they can't package the amount of space that you even get in something like an all-wheel drive Tesla, let alone a rear-wheel drive one. So I think that's probably a point where Hyundai needs to do a little bit more work, but outside of that, it is pretty sort of enjoyable to drive. And the looks, well, styling is entirely subjective. So let me know in the comments section below, have you bought one? What do you think of it? How's it going? Are you enjoying it? That is the most important part. Let me know what you reckon down there. If you did enjoy this video, please make sure you like it and you share it with your mates. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon. Really appreciate it if you did. Till next time, take it easy.